today's talk. Today it's about Australia and New Zealand. As I said, we are recording the talks and they will be on the website. I know the American, Australia, Canada one isn't there just yet, but it will be in the coming days. Just bear with us. So yeah, we're going to talk today about Australia and New Zealand, and we do have some students here that were in Australia and New Zealand last year, so I'll introduce them in a second. But before we do that, I'm just going to click onto our next slide. Here's a map of Australia and New Zealand. In New Zealand, we have two main partners, one in the top, Auckland, one down towards the bottom in the South Island, that's Otago. And then we have partners along the coast, the Gold Coast, so that being Queensland. And then we have University of Sydney, University of New South Wales in Sydney. We have Australian National University in Canberra, University of Melbourne, and then over on the west, the University of Western Australia, which is in Perth. Okay, so to start off, I thought no better people to hear from than students that have been on exchange before. So I'm going to introduce some of our students that can talk, to give you a few minutes introduction about their time on exchange. Okay, so Monica, do you want to go first and just what you studied, where you studied, or what you're studying here at UCD and where you studied, and maybe just a highlight of your time there?
Yeah, so my name's Monica and I went to University of Sydney. So I was studying single honours economics in UCD, and then I went on to do obviously economics in University of Sydney, which is like in the centre of Sydney, which was amazing. The campus is beautiful. It's like really old buildings, which is really gorgeous. People think loads of Asian tourists always go there thinking it looks like Hogwarts. So there's always like loads of people around taking photos of it. So the campus is stunning. Great study places and stuff like that. I lived on a student accommodation on campus as well, which was really nice and modern. You had your own room, double bed, and a TV as well. It was really lovely. Actually, just had the best year of my life. What?
I think that sounds like the nicest campus accommodation I've heard about. That sounds really
it was actually insane. I loved it. And the highlight was just the beaches in Sydney, and the lecturers were really good as well. Actually, I liked economics in second year, but I really got to like it when I went away to Sydney, because I just really found a love for it, and just the beach lifestyle is the best as well.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. Thanks a million, Monica. Okay, we might ask Circa to go next. If you can you hear me there, Circa?
Yeah, I can.
Perfect. So what are you studying here in UCD, and where did you go on exchange?
So I was studying health and performance science in UCD, and then when we went to Otago in New Zealand, and it was, we did sports science, and we got to choose like a few other courses and modules as well to study.
Like Otago is probably one of the furthest places you can go on exchange with UCD. What was the highlight of your time in Otago?
Probably the highlights, we bought a car like the week we got there, so we just every weekend we went and we traveled all around the North Island, South Island, so just a lot of traveling, like so beautiful. Honestly,
and was that because I know a good few sports science students go there, did you buy it with, was it just your group of sports science students, or was there other people involved as well?
So there was the sports science people I was with, and then there was a sports management girl as well, Robin. So it was 4 of us or whatever, yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, that sounds great. Fergus, we might ask you just if you want to just tell us what you're studying here at UCD and where you went on exchange. I think it was Sydney as well, right?
Yeah, so I'm studying structural engineering, and I was at the University of Sydney as well, actually with Monica. We were the two UCD people there. So I'd agree with her on that. Like, some of the highlights of Australia was just the lifestyle, like beaches everywhere, and I got a chance to do loads of traveling all around Australia as well. I'd say.
Where was your favorite? Like, it's probably really hard to pick, but where was your favorite place that you visited?
Yeah, I mean, I think like if you go to Australia, you kind of have to see the Great Barrier Reef. That is amazing. And also just places like Bondi Beach, like you hear about them, it seems like a stereotype, but like they actually are just amazing places, and they do kind of live up to the hype in that way.
Wow, yeah, it sounds great. I'm going to ask some more specific information. Monica, you've already touched on accommodation in University of Sydney, so we might just leave that. But Sarah, what was the accommodation like in Otago? What was the setup there?
Yeah, I was on campus as well, but we had like houses. Each person, like there were like 5 people in a house, and then each house was in some sort of complex of then like 6 or 7 houses. And then for each house, we had a Kiwi house, so like a local person that was willing to like show you around the place. And then in my complex specifically, each Kiwi host was friends with one another. So then we got to meet so many exchange students that were like living right beside us, and then that was just kind of the people I made friends with and then traveled around with. So
Wow, that sounds like such a great idea. And nice that like you have a house rather than an apartment. There's something a bit more homely about that.
yeah, it was quite homey. And then obviously I was there for lockdown, so it was nice
Oh,
to have a home as well.
yeah, I'm sure that did help.
Yeah,
Just a bit more space.
yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, yeah. And you felt that
Um,
like warm to like say what your interests were. So then I ended up being in the skiing complex. Everyone there skied, so it was quite cool to
yeah,
like.
that's great. So you filled in a form at the start to say what you were interested in, and you put down skiing, and they put you with other skiers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Wow, yeah, that's really good. And did you end up going on any ski trips with them, or?
Yeah, we went on to 3 actually towards the end. Yeah, it was really
Oh,
good.
that sounds really good. I
Yeah,
really like the idea that they kind of considered your interest when they were placing you.
yeah,
And that was probably good as well to separate yourself away from the UCD students. Because I know this like from experience of talking with students, sometimes if you go with, like there's a few people in your course going, you can end up having maybe a little bit of a UCD bubble.
yeah.
So it's good that you were separated as well. Fergus, can I ask, was it difficult? Like, I know what probably some of the most stressful things are like setting up accommodation, doing setting up your module and courses. Was the process for University of Sydney, was that hard to figure out accommodation, or was it just you ticked a box, I want to get on campus, or what was the process?
It was relatively straightforward. Like their communication was really, really good. So as soon as UCD nominated me to go to Sydney, like I was just getting constant emails from them explaining the whole process to me. And then I went for on-campus accommodation for the first semester, which I'd really recommend. It was really, really social and a great way to meet people, because I was going to Sydney like without knowing anyone. But it was kind of nice in the accommodation because everyone, like all the international students, were in the same boat. They were all going there with a completely open mind and like trying to make new friends. So being on campus was great for the first semester. And then I actually moved into a house then with some friends that I'd made. So in the first semester I made friends, and then we got a house together for the second time. So I kind of got a taste of both then.
Yeah. And was it sometimes there's like there's a toss up between the ease of getting on campus accommodation and then maybe the price of maybe going off campus might be cheaper. Was there a significant cost differences to being on campus and being off campus?
It kind of varies a lot. So like if you were trying to get a house quite central, like near the campus is pretty central, like in the middle of Sydney, which was one of the attractions for me. I wanted to be kind of close to everything.
Yeah.
That meant that the accommodation near to the campus was quite expensive, like nearly the same price as the on-campus accommodation. But if you're looking for something like a bit cheaper, it did get like you could get things a lot cheaper if you just went a little bit further out.
Yeah, I suppose kind of probably standard to most cities really. If you want to be right in the centre, it's going to be more expensive. But then if you go that bit further out, yeah, it'll be a bit more expensive or cheaper. Yeah, okay, cool. Did they have anything similar to what was happening in Otago, where you had like a Kiwi host in Otago? Did you have a local student that showed you around, or was a mentor program or a buddy system or anything like that?
Yeah, we were given, we were assigned a mentor when we arrived. No, I didn't end up doing much with my mentor, but like they were kind of a communication point if you had any questions.
Yeah.
And then like the best way then for kind of meeting people was that the university organized lots of trips at the start, for international students specifically. So things like surfing trips and just trips up the east coast of Australia, into the countryside.
Amazing.
So
Yeah.
like it was great for meeting people right at the start.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest recommendations when you go on exchange is to get involved, and actually it's part of UCD use that term as well a lot for students, new students coming into UCD, and I highly recommend it because if you just stay in your room, you're not going to meet anyone or make any friends. So you have to just head off on your own and head to the activities that the international office are organising, or the clubs and societies are organising, or whatever it is. And yeah, just it's the best way to meet people, I think. So I might just skip back maybe a step or two. I know I talked about accommodation there, but ask about visas. Monica, did you have any issues getting your visa for Australia? What was the process like?
Actually, looking back on it, I think I got my visa last May. Was that 2 years ago or 1 year ago? I don't even remember. But I literally applied on like the evening time, and by the morning time it had been granted. It was actually so easy. Like, it took a while to fill out the form, but it got granted really quickly. So like there wasn't really any issue. Like, you just have to kind of fill in all the bits, but that's really it.
Yeah, good. And then for New Zealand, Sorka, was it any different or slower, or what was the situation there?
Yeah, it was definitely granted quite quickly. I don't think it's really an issue of it being granted or not. It's more just like there's so much you need to. It's like you need to show proof of like financial stability and where you're gonna go, where you're gonna be staying and stuff like that. But once you're accepted by the university, it kind of gets easier, I think, because they give you lots of forms that you can just put in, and yeah, it's grand.
Yeah, it is. It is a bit of a process, I suppose, applying for any visa. Definitely a life skill you'll have going forward if you ever live at any place else. But yeah, usually they just want to know that you're covered by health insurance and that you have the financial means to live in the country without a job as well. So yeah, it can be a little bit tricky figuring out those forms. But as you say, once you got them, they were granted quite quickly and easily. So we've talked a little bit about the campus through the, I suppose, touching on accommodation, but Monica, would you be able to tell us like some of the main differences between UCD's campus and the University of Sydney? Kind of like, I suppose, in relation to size and maybe the facilities that are on campus and things like that.
Yeah, one thing I'd say that the gym you had to pay for in Sydney, which was really annoying, and it was actually quite expensive, while in UCD it's obviously free and stuff. But in similarities, both campuses were very big. Like, it was it would take a long time to walk around, but like very accessible at the same time. Like, the university gives you you can download an app at the same time, and you can, like, it shows you where all the buildings are, and like shows you how to navigate for classes and stuff. Brilliant. The library's free and really good as well, but I think that would be the main.
Gym was probably like the biggest disappointment that you had to pay for.
Yeah, like I joined a gym outside the university because it was just cheaper. It was still quite close, but it's just a bit different because like obviously we have such good facilities in UCD for the gym and stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and then Sorka in Otago, I know some team spirit is massive in Otago. That's something that students have mentioned before. Did you pick up on that when you were there? Like
sorry,
going to the game and stuff.
Pardon? Sorry, I just didn't hear across from my Wi-Fi.
Yeah, sorry. Some of the students before that have been to Otago have mentioned, like, is it the rugby games or something like that? And just like everybody from the campus would be at them, and just like really, really good fun.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. Like when we first got there was this huge sports day, and I want to say every single person on campus showed up, but it was pretty crazy. And then they have these huge things you don't even know what they're about, but you just go to anyway. And then the matches are just, they call it the zoo, where all the students go, and it's a whole experience, to be honest. It's great.
But it's good. Is there anything similar in UCD campus? Like, is there like a sports event that everybody would turn up to? I don't know. can't think about it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know, we have a few fairs, I suppose, but I don't know, nothing really quite at the likes.
Yeah. And it's the same when students go to America. Something that they notice is just like any of the team sports, or the big sports, and they go. It's just an event. They're massive. So with regards to the campus, then is it like similar in size to UCD, smaller? What are the facilities like?
It's probably around the same size, maybe. Yeah, so I had lockdown, so I didn't get to actually be in college for that much. I think I was there for 5 or 6 weeks. But in regards to sports science, their facilities were just incredible. Like, honestly, much better than what we have in UCD. I think they just have more money put into it. But yeah, no. And then all the lectures were recorded, like what we have now, prior to lockdown. So it was quite nice, like just to, if you even couldn't find your lecture, you could just watch it online as well. So yeah, no, it was great.
But they record their lectures whether COVID or no COVID. You could see the lecture, or was that just brought? Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So then classes in University of Sydney, Fergus, were they much different than UCD? I think you said, I think you might have mentioned this already. Or what's the teaching like? Is it kind of the same as UCD, or is it different? Or assessment? Was it more continuous assessment, or one big assessment at the end?
I think it kind of varied from module to module, I suppose. I did find that it was maybe a little bit of a step up in standard. But at the same time, like, we do 6 modules per semester here in UCD, and when I was in Sydney, I only had to do 4.
Yeah.
So like, while the standard might be slightly higher, like the workload is probably a little bit less, just because you're only doing 4 modules rather than 6. So that kind of balanced out a little bit. And then the teaching, like, in the same way as like the academics might have been a slightly higher standard, I also thought the teaching like kind of reflected that. Like, all the teachers were really, really good.
Oh yeah, amazing, brilliant. And then regards assessment, did you notice any differences, or pretty much the same as you'd have here in UCD?
Probably similar to here, like similar to what Circa was saying about Otago there. Like, Sydney, they're much more equipped for being online, even pre-COVID. So they already had everything recorded, and like, quite a lot of the assignments would have been online submission as well. So that was one of the differences, I suppose.
Okay. Monica, how did you find the classes in comparison to UCD? I know that you said that you really started to enjoy economics when you were there.
I found the classes really interesting. They were definitely more of a step up as well. Like, I thought it'd be a lot easier with having 4 modules, but I did like 2 third-year modules and 2 second-year modules in the first semester, and the third-year modules were very difficult. Like, I had to put in a lot of work, but it was kind of inspirational at the same time. It kind of made me realize that I don't mind putting in the work at the same time. And it was kind of interesting to learn economics from a different point of view, because obviously we're learning it from an Irish point of view and it's more European focused. But doing it over there is from like an Australian and more of an Asian influenced point of view of economics and stuff, which I actually really enjoyed. And coming back to Ireland, it's nice to have a wider kind of range of like information.
Yeah, probably something that you can bring into your assignments this year in economics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that additional bit of knowledge. But I think what you've just said there, Monica, is what everybody that does that YE exchange was almost created, that you do get that different perspective than what you would if you just stayed on in the UCD campus. I think, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. So I've asked you there a little bit about accommodation, visas, classes, and the campus. Is there any piece of advice that you would give the students that are interested in going in exchange next year? And we might start with Sorka.
Advice-wise, well, regards to where you're going, do you mean specifically New Zealand or just generally?
No, just in general. Just in general. It can be specific to New Zealand if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I had this completely different perception on what I was gonna have, like what experience I was gonna have. I think I was really nervous, so I didn't really look into it that much. But what I did look into didn't really reflect. I don't know. I can't explain it, but as in, you just have to go. Don't think about it too much, and yeah, it's just the best experience you could do, honestly. Yeah, just don't think. I was very nervous because I'm quite, I don't know, maybe introverted type person, but it was definitely just the best experience.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, because it can be, you could think about it a bit too much and then talk yourself out of it, but actually you're going to have this huge adventure. Like, why not go?
Yeah.
Monica, what would you say if you had a piece of advice or a tip for the students thinking about going on exchange?
My advice would be just to go with like a super open mind, and like you make friends with someone you never thought you'd ever make friends with. That I have friends I'm from all over the globe now, and I just never thought that I'd have such a wide range of people, because I feel like in Ireland we're so like set in our ways and we have our little friend group and it's grand, and then like going over there I met so many different people, and I'm just like I I was also really nervous going over, so I didn't really look into it much. So then like when I got over there, there was just so much to take in. So you just need to go with like a really, really open mind, and just anyone that you meet, just get their Facebook straight away. That's what I found. Actually, that's a really good piece of advice, is to add them on Facebook as soon as you meet them, because then you make connections. Because you know the way sometimes you'd meet someone but you don't get their phone number or their contact and never see them again. It's better just to get them on social media straight away.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, Monica. Yeah, just like you have to put yourself out there, and then the idea that you end up with friends all over the world, like that's what's after happening to me from living in a few different countries. And now when I travel, the places that I travel to, typically I'll know somebody. So the last time I went to Singapore, I got to meet up with two people that I knew when I lived in Dubai, and it's just so great having someone there that can give you all the good tips, or even stay with them, or so yeah, it's one of the massive benefits of exchange. And then Fergus, what would you say? What would be your tip or advice? Or
I think you just have to really force yourself to go, and like even if you are a bit nervous about it, just get out of your comfort zone a little bit. That was kind of the way I was looking at it, because I had never even lived away from home, like even in Dublin, and to suddenly go living like as far away as possible, basically. So I was a bit nervous about that, but like you kind of, if you just go there and just like really force yourself to get out there. So like if you have a free afternoon or something, don't just sit in your room. Like just get out and see everything, see as much as you can. Like I actually just can't recommend it enough. I was nervous going over, but it ended up being the best year of my life.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. And I think we've touched on it already, where we said, like, if you sit in your room, you're not going to meet anybody or do anything. You have to just get out, and you never know who you might meet on a walk or whatever it is. But you just, like, I remember I moved to America for a while, and I was just about to pack my bags and go home, and my mom said, just go out for a walk before you make any decision. And I ended up bumping into people that I'd met on a previous night out, and they were all like, come over to our house, and we had the best time, and I stayed for the entire time I was meant to be there. So yeah, you have to put yourself out there, even though it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. I think that's it for all my questions, guys. Thanks so much for coming along. Yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you. You don't have to say it. Okay, bye. Okay, so we're going to continue on in the presentation, and then we will have time for questions at the end. I am going to skip through the presentation because the presentation will be online, so you can review it yourself. But basically, we're going to introduce some of the partner universities, or majority of the partner universities, not all of them, and we are then going to look at some of the practicalities. For now, you shouldn't worry yourself too much about things like accommodation or visas. For now, you should really just be thinking about, where do I want to go? Where do I want to apply to? So we'll start with Australian National University. It's in Canberra, the capital city of Australia. It's Australia's highest ranked university and ranked 47th in the world. And the campus university with on-campus accommodation guaranteed for exchange students, which is great and can be a bit of a safety net for a lot of our students heading off on exchange. And we partner with the University of Melbourne. Its main campus is located in Parkville, an inner suburb north of Melbourne Central Business District, so a bit like UCD, just outside the city centre. It's part of the UCD is part of a network, the U21 network. It doesn't really affect you too much, but yeah, it's part of that U21 network, and it's ranked 33rd in the world. So again, another really highly ranked university. We have the University in New South Wales, again, which is in Sydney. It is 20 minutes outside of the city centre, which is the like relatively close to the famous Opera House, and then 10 minutes from beaches, which sounds lovely, especially as we go into winter here in Ireland. And it's ranked 78th in the world. We have the University of Queensland, which is up by Brisbane, which is much closer to the Great Barrier Reef. It's the largest and oldest university of Queensland. Again, it's part of the U21 network, but it doesn't really, that won't make too much of a difference to you. And ranked 60th in the world. And then we have the University of Western Australia, which is located on the other side of Australia. It's 10 minutes from the city centre. It's 125th in the world. And again, it's a smaller city, but there's lots, like I have some friends who live there, and just being able to, loads going on like around the area, like outdoor activities and things like that, really easy to get out and about, even though it is a bit further from some of the other cities. There's still lots going on there. And then we're going to move to New Zealand. So we have the University of Auckland on the North Island, and it's ranked #1 in New Zealand, and it's the largest and highest ranked, it's the largest university as well in New Zealand. From there we have the University of Otago, which is on the South Island. It's in a place called Dunedin, or am I pronouncing that right? And it has, as Sorcha mentioned, it has student accommodation, the housing on there, so that's really, really handy. So some of the universities to note, we don't have too many places in University of Queensland and University of Melbourne. The University of Western Australia and Australian National University, we have a larger amount of places, and they're particularly good for our students that need to get into specific classes. That's the University of Western Australia and Australian National University. So I'm talking about there for engineers and our science students. It's just something to keep in mind when you're applying, but always apply for where you want to go to. Don't let anything we say affect where you want to go to. UNSW is only available to arts, humanities and social science students, and it's because of the academic calendar. So if you are looking at the UNSW, just be aware that its academic calendar is slightly different, actually a lot more different than ours. And you can only do, if you go for one of their main terms, they have three main terms, you can only do 3 classes. So that can be a bit of a challenge for our science and engineers students in particular, who have to get specific classes. So that's why they don't go there anymore. But for arts, humanities and social science students, it's still an option, but just to note that you usually go there for 1 week or 1 term, a very short term. It's usually a month long and you do 1 module intensively, and then you go for the next term and you do 3 modules, and it's more like a regular university term. The shorter term usually is there's more international students attending those classes, and then the main terms they would have the regular all students. And again, just to note, University of Auckland has doesn't have too many places, but University of Otago, you should definitely consider it. I know it's further down south, but definitely worth considering. Okay, so just some practical information. As I said, I wouldn't focus too much on this at the moment. You can worry about this once you get offered a place by us, and then that you're accepted into by the partner university. But it is important to note that the academic calendar is different. So the academic calendars go on a calendar basis. So they start in January and obviously finish in December there. So they will have, they'll use term 1 when we're in trimester 2. Yeah, so definitely keep that in mind. Another thing with that is that they're in wintertime here, it's their summertime, so that's their bigger break. So then when it comes to the summertime here, when you be going on exchange, if you're going for trimester 1 or for the full year, you may have to go a bit earlier because that's their winter break, and they have a much shorter winter break, similarly to the way we have a shorter winter break. So some of the universities actually start in July. And so really important to check out the calendars of the universities that you're interested in going to, especially if you usually work during the summer, or yeah, you use that time for an internship or something along the lines, just to keep that in mind that you actually might have to be there in July. So then health insurance is pretty straightforward and usually much cheaper than if you're going to America or someplace like that. So for Australia, you're talking about 550 Australian dollars, and then for New Zealand, 595. This is obviously subject to change. We don't control this in any way, so you will have to check this out once you get offered a place. And then we mentioned visas, and the guys talked about the process, but usually it's all online. You just have to fill in all the bits of information, which can take time, so don't leave it to the last minute. But then they pretty much got their visas straight away after it. But just don't leave anything to the last minute when it comes to visas. So when you're over there, we don't recommend that any students work while they're on exchange. You really should be focusing on your academics, and then also like enjoying the country that you're in and the experiences, and be able to do all the travel like the guys talked about. So in Australia though, it is possible to work. You can work 20 hours per week during the term, and then unlimited, well, obviously within their laws during the holidays. In New Zealand, single semesters students are not. So if you're just going for one trimester, you're not allowed to work. Full year students, I think, can work, and they can work 20 hours per week. But again, as I say, we don't advise that our students work when they're on exchange. It's already difficult enough trying to figure out a new system, never mind have to get yourself a job and put all their time into that too. Cost of living. So this is a question that comes up quite a bit. So we have amounts there for University of Queensland and University of Otago. So you can see them there on screen. Every university will have a predicted cost of living, or estimated cost of living rather than predicted. And you should take a look. So usually I just Google University of Melbourne cost of living, and it'll come up what they suggest you to have. Now, keep in mind, we mentioned this in some of our other presentations, but keep in mind you do not pay their university tuition fees. You continue to pay your UCD tuition fees. So always just keep that in mind. Let's say one of the universities has a 20,000 Australian dollar tuition fee. You would never pay that. You simply pay your UCD tuition. So again, accommodation is your own responsibility to organise, but usually the partner university will help you do it. So you heard about 2 different options there, where Monica was on campus for the entire time. Fergus started on campus and then he moved off campus, but it was still, about the same price because he wanted to be close to the city centre. And then we had Surika, who was in housing and had a local mentor as well. So yeah, all the universities will have different options, but typically they'll all help you sort it out, and it'll be great. We always recommend, if you can, go on campus because it's the easiest. So just some thoughts on what it can be like when you go on exchange. It's hard to imagine, as Sorka said, she had one thing in her mind and it was completely different when she got there. But just always keep in mind terminology, like they might use different words, like modules, I think, can be readings or classes or courses. Assessment might be different. For example, there might be continuous assessment, or there could be one assessment at the very end. So just keep in mind that they can be different to UCD. Participation can be different. So in some of our partner universities, they'd be much more they would want you to participate a lot more in class. So I would always say take note of what's happening around you and the people and the other students in the class and see what they're doing. And then the size, a lot of time the classes can be smaller, but equally they can be much, much bigger than UCD. The level, I know that Fergus and Monica address this, that the level can be more difficult, but in some cases it can also be easier. And then the expectations are in relationship with academics. So a lot of the academics will have office hours like they do here in UCD, but in some universities they would be expecting for you to use those office hours, and if you're not using them, then you don't come across as interested. So make sure you're checking that out and seeing what other students are doing, and if you're hearing that a student went to meet the academic, make sure that you're checking in and maybe getting feedback on assessments or whatever it is. And then modular registration, this can be the hardest part, especially for students that have to get specific classes when they're on exchange. So it's just tricky because you're not considered a full degree student once you're there, like you are here at UCD. So you may have to go on a wait list, or you may have to go ask a lecturer if you can go into a class, or you may not get the class you need and you have to email back to UCD, either your academic exchange coordinator here in UCD, and come up with a different solution. So modular registration is probably one of the most trickiest things to sort out, but once you get it sorted, it's done and dusted, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Okie dokie, moving on. So what to do next? We have 2 more really important sessions. Oh, well, we have an Erasmus session on tomorrow, so make sure that you attend that. We have, at this stage, you should be just looking up universities, seeing what's taking your fancy, where you want to go, what countries you're interested in, or if it's not a specific country, what type of location do you want to be in a small town, university town, or do you want to be in a big city? So to kind of ask yourself those questions, but also to ask, what can you afford? Do you want to spend tons of money or do you want to maybe go to a cheaper location? So you can check, that's all really, really straightforward. As I said, you can check that out by going to the university's websites and seeing what they suggest the cost of living to be, or you can just Google it, do a Google search. Make sure that you're keeping your grades up, you're working hard, you're getting your definitely above the 3.0 GPA, and so make sure that you keep doing that, because the higher your GPA, the better chance you'll get into the universities that you want. You can speak to your exchange coordinator, but maybe a little bit later down the line. You can speak to them about maybe the modules that you would like to take, or maybe if one of them is your lecturer, you can ask at the end of class where students have gone before in the past. And then we are going to have a virtual study abroad fair where you can ask questions to some of the students that have gone on exchange before, and that is the date will come up on the next screen. Yeah, so we're going to have some more talks in October. We're going to have virtual office hours in November. We're going to have our virtual exchange fair, which I was just talking about there, 4th of November. Application is going to open November 17th, but don't panic, it just opens, it stays open all the way through to it. Actually, this date has to be confirmed, but it's going to be around the 22nd of January. We'll share that information with you. Then we'll have a selection process where you'll be told if you were successful or not all the way through to 15th of March, and then pre-departure session. So we'll be meeting with you to talk about where you're going and what your next steps are, and that's from February through to April. So here are the rest of the talks that you can attend. We have one tomorrow, that's Europe with a focus on North meets South. We have standout options, so that's a really interesting talk I highly recommend, next Tuesday, I think the 20th, and then an application and budgeting talk on the Wednesday. So that's going to be really interesting because you're going to learn how to apply. And then we have our fair on the 4th. So tomorrow, just for further information, it's Spanish and Italian universities predominantly, but equally I would still attend to learn more about other options that you can go to in Europe, and it's a good chance to ask questions about Europe as well. Here is our contact information, so if you do have any questions, you can let us know, and you can actually let me know now if you have any questions. We have